Story 1. Let's talk about air quality. Since the 1970s, we have reduced air pollution by approximately 90%. This is a key factor. This statement refers to North America. I am wondering if millennials in other countries with poor air quality also look younger or if they appear more aged. Story 2. My wife has a theory about this that I think holds water. Millennials look younger at the same age than the generations before us because fewer of us smoked, we were more health conscious in general, and sunscreen became widely used at an age when it could still benefit us. There are definitely millennials in their 40s who are now getting into all the things that are supposed to make you look younger, but we are doing it at the age it was designed to help, and we are the beneficiaries of research conducted by baby boomers seeking the same effect. Generation Z young people today look older than we did at that age because some of their beauty regimens take an actual toll. If you are doing Botox and fillers, removing subcutaneous fat such as buccal fat removal, or similar procedures at 20, you are setting yourself up in a race against yourself for the rest of your life. If you think you needed that at 20, where do you go after doing that for 10 years and now you are 30? Story 3. The delayed aging millennial and premature aging Generation Z that young people these days are concerned about is by far my favorite popular culture trend. Warms the cockles of my cold, dead heart. Story 4. I am 28 years old, and my dermatologist mentioned this last week. She said millennials are her lowest risk group for skin damage because we were the first generation to have parents who constantly applied sunscreen. I guess all that careful poolside sunscreen application paid off. Story 5. I have rarely seen my baby boomer parents drink a glass of water. Every millennial I know has a large emotional support water bottle. Story 6. Something I haven't seen mentioned is style of dress. I remember growing up, women over 35 often dressed matronly. Basically, it was common to forfeit sex appeal or wear things like short skirts, spaghetti straps, crop tops, and so on, excluding celebrities generally. Women especially now don't subscribe to the whole idea of what to wear when you're over 30. They don't fall into the expectation of having to have certain hairstyles or clothing styles at a certain age, and that changes age perception a lot. Now, this could be a chicken or egg situation. If you look younger, you might pull off trends more easily than if you look older and so feel comfortable in them. But I do think it's a contributing factor to perceptions about age. Story 7. Yes, millennials appear younger due to major health and lifestyle advancements. Older generations smoked, worked labor-intensive jobs, were directly exposed to ultraviolet light for hours a day, had poorer diets, inhaled lead gas fumes, were exposed to more toxic and dangerous substances, etc. Story 8. Smoking is very hard on your skin. Generation X and Generation Z both smoke at far higher rates than we did. Generation Z also had social media during their teen years, so their style is very curated compared to millennials. That is why, when you compare high school pictures, Generation Z looks much older. Poorly put together outfits and teenage awkwardness make people look properly young. I also imagine the surgical or near-surgical beauty enhancements will take a heavy toll on Generation Z's appearance as they age. Botox, fat removal, and similar procedures will be rough in a few years. That said, Generation Z being sad little homebodies who are obsessed with fitness and not drinking may help in a big way. Drinking ages people, and Generation Z are too hyper-aware and afraid of being cringe to drink like millennials did. Story 9. Perspective is part of it. The older I get, the younger young people look to me. Sometimes people my parents' age say I look youthful, yet I see myself as badly aging. Story 10. I am turning 40 in June and I work at a restaurant. Half the kids I work with think I am in my 20s or early 30s at most. I think it's hilarious when someone asks, "Aren't you 22?" I reply, "Dude, my daughter is 18. Story 11. All the comments focus on sun exposure and other health factors that cause aging. One thing not being discussed is how Generation Z looks much older than millennials did at the same age. Many teenagers at the high school near me have full beards. Story 12. I don't think millennials look younger than they really are. I think millennials look their age. Previous generations looked older than they were because of smoking, sun tanning, lead poisoning, and haircuts that aged poorly. Generation Z thinks millennials look young because they think anyone over 25 is geriatric. Story 13. They definitely look younger than previous generations. There are many reasons for this. We are much better about wearing sunscreen than previous generations, and generally we are not outside as much. Much less smoking, much less drinking. Air quality is much better. Story 14. Less indoor smoking exposure is my theory. My dad looked as old as 40 years. However, he was a smoker, a heavy drinker, and soon to be deceased. Story 15. I'm on the older side of the millennial generation, born in 1982. While I think my peers and I looked young in our 30s, we are starting to look our age now. I feel like we didn't age much until about 40, then we caught up really fast. As for why, I don't know. Many of us didn't have the stress of raising children in our 30s. We tend to stay somewhat fashionable in the way we dress. We follow skincare routines and stay out of the sun, which our parents did not do. Many of us also looked much younger before having COVID-19 a few times and have aged a lot since. There are many different possible factors at play. Story 16. I would say millennials look younger than previous generations because the world is a healthier place with less air pollution and less smoking. Generation Z looks older because of social media. They grew up in a world where their appearance was expected to be both mature and perfect before they even reached puberty. The disappearance of teen trends and the constant pressure of social media likely had an impact. Generation Z is still too young for us to know how they will actually age. They look mature and not youthful, but they do not look old. Story 17. I do because I have seen too many 22-year-olds who look like 40-year-olds trying to look 30 but ending up looking 36, if that makes sense. I have also seen many 36-year-olds who look 23. I blame it on how many Generation Z individuals vape or have vaped. Story 18. Yes, although the gap is closing. Many of us could still pass for our early 20s until our 30s, but now the crow's feet and laugh lines are giving the game away. We are still aging more gently than Generation X and Generation Z, but we look like well-maintained middle age instead of rough life. Echoing what others have said, between reduced smoking and no vaping when we were kids, better hydration, better skincare, and sunblock, we have just taken less overall damage than others. Story 19. I recently made an international trip returning home to Canada from a European country. The person at the gate checking boarding passes was scanning my passport and asked me how old I was and if arrangements had been made for when I land, such as someone picking me up. I told her I am 33. The lady was surprised, and my partner could not contain their laughter. I am Asian, so I have that plus the millennial anti-aging effect working together. Story 20. Yes, especially those in their late 20s to mid-30s. I think it is a mix of better skincare, staying out of the sun more, and the fact that many millennials do not have children yet. Stress really ages you. Story 21. My wife is 33 and looks 23. It is a struggle because she is literally a doctor, a primary care physician. She gets called nurse all the time. When she corrects a new patient that she is their doctor, they assume she is a medical student. My wife is strict about sunscreen. She does not smoke, prioritizes her mental health, meditates, and finds ways to bring more joy into her life. I am noticing many Generation Z women who look older than my wife. I am 37. There have been times when I thought a Generation Z woman was close to my age, and they got offended. Generation Z men are not offended by this mistake. It is obvious why a woman would be offended. Story 22. No, not really. I think it is wishful thinking, and it is not exclusive to millennials. Surveys consistently show the majority of people believe they look younger than they are. The statistical contradiction here is obvious. If you scroll through Instagram or TikTok, you see that anytime someone mentions their age, even in a way that is tangential and neither bragging nor requesting feedback on how they look, the comments will flood with people saying they are the same age or older, but the original poster looks like their mother or how they hope they do not age like that, etc. Millennials think they look younger than other millennials too, but then so do Generation Z, baby boomers, and Generation X. Younger people think they have good genes or hope that someone looks older than their age because they fear looking the same as them as they get older. Not to mention, we have all encountered how radically different we can look in different lighting, how phone cameras, even without filters, can distort our features and skin, and how this varies across phones. I suspect we are biased toward remembering the more flattering representations of ourselves and thinking of those as the true version, while focusing on less flattering representations of others. The media people constantly make and consume does not give a true representation, and that is without even trying to fake it, let alone all the people who do. Basically, everyone is deluding themselves. You all look around your ages. No, we do not care about the time you got identification or how everyone is always shocked or someone thought you were a student. Story 23. Millennials grew up in a period when we began to understand the harm of smoking, suntanning, and dehydration. They smoke less, handle sun exposure responsibly, and drink more water. This is great for your skin and has a positive impact on aging. Story 24. Nothing to do with smoking relates to hairstyles and makeup. People tend to keep the same hairstyle and makeup throughout their lives, and we associate that with older generations. Story 25. Every generation has its trends. Some last longer than others, leading to various overlaps. Hairstyles, clothing, mannerisms, and names often trigger age assumptions. There has been a larger music divide over the last 100 years. For example, Greatest Generation Sinatra-style swing. Silent Generation, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis. Baby Boomers, Beatles, Bruce Springsteen. Generation X, AC, DC, Run DMC. Millennials, Biggie Smalls, Limp Bizkit. Generation Z, similar artists doing the same things as above. Generation Alpha, same so far. While Baby Boomers said, "What is this rap stuff?" Millennials either jam with their kid or say, "This particular rap song is trash." When the Greatest Generation said, "What is this rock and roll?" the Baby Boomers did not hate AC/DC. It's a cycle. Long ago, before records and radio, generational divides were smaller and changes took longer. Now, we are seeing a temporary max out of newness, so the lagging generation does not look as separate. Also, technologically, millennials can use computers. Their parents cannot. So now, a collared shirt baby boomer walks in complaining about that rap music, listening to the Beatles talking about how newfangled computer devices do not make sense. Meanwhile, a millennial walks into the room. There is a Generation Z member wearing a t-shirt. The millennial is there, the Generation Z member is listening to rap, the millennial sings along. The Generation Z member plays Minecraft, the millennial logs in to join. That is the divide. Story 26. I think television has distorted our perception of what people look like at certain ages. 25-year-olds playing teenagers with gray-haired 60-year-old parents gets in your head. Story 27. Do not confuse our childish behavior with youthful looks. Generation Z tends to dress and style themselves to look older with mustaches, hairstyles, and clothing, so millennials often end up looking younger by comparison. Story 28. Sunscreen has helped people look younger for longer. Also, women no longer style their hair like grandmothers at age 40 to 50, so they look much younger than previous generations. Story 29. Everyone is ignoring that it is literally a meme how obsessed millennials are with staying trendy and cool, combined with fashion trends both slowing way down and accelerating to such a point that they have been rapidly revisiting a past decade every year. For my high school, it took about 5 to 6 years per decade of trends to move through. The combined effect is that nobody knows who is just a year behind in fashion, a year ahead, playing it conservative or simply old. My morning walk to daycare with my daughter passes 2 high schools, and they are all wearing essentially what I am wearing, give or take some details. The only thing that I think would make me stand out from the crowd when they walk between their campuses is that I wear outerwear rain shells. The strangest fashion choice I see is that none of the kids wear raincoats. They all wear cotton hoodies even in a downpour. Whoever can make raincoats cool is going to make a fortune selling to Generation Z. Story 30. Yes, it could be a combination of stress management and fashion. Complex sociological factors, the advent of technology, and the consistency of hairstyles over the last 3 decades all play a role. It is hard to pinpoint one main factor, but it is probably environmental. Story 31. I think it's just sun exposure. We played video games inside instead of running around the block all day. We also used sunscreen. Story 32. People guessed my age as 26 years old when I was between 18 and 34 years old. It was great. Now I have gray hairs in my beard, and people have started guessing more accurately. Story 33. Hydration. My parents used to say, water is for when you are thirsty, when I would be drinking cups of water back to back. Jokes on them. I was thirsty and had not trained myself to ignore it the way they had. Also, less alcohol. My dad drinks a lot, but just not water. No smoking, as others have said. I agree that indoor smoke when I was young contributed to my severe sinus issues. Sunscreen, as others have said. No expensive invasive procedures. Fewer children at a young age. No exposure to factory chemicals. I do not look great for my age, but I think on average people in my age group look better than their parents did at the same age. Story 34. The older you get, the younger people tend to look. It is not that they look younger than the previous generation. It is that our brains tend to compare. So, today a 20-year-old looks younger relative to yourself than they did yesterday. Story 35. Millennials jumped on the wellness train earlier and do not partake in some of the toxic habits of prior generations, such as not wearing SPF, avoiding exercise, and smoking. I also think the generations behind us look older, rather than us actually looking younger. Teens and early 20-somethings dress and style themselves similarly to millennials, shop at the same stores, and use more advanced makeup techniques. When I was a teen, stores like Limited 2, Forever 21, and Charlotte Russe specifically catered to teens and young adults. Now, many young people wear the same Zara, Fashion Nova, Shine, and Lululemon clothing that adults wear. Additionally, many in their early 20s are getting cosmetic procedures like Botox and fillers, which can age them as well. Story 36. I think this remains to be seen, to be honest. The internet does not like to hear it, but being under 45 is still young. I am a 1993 baby and have yet to see or feel any real changes from when I was 18 to now. Story 37. Yes, I think it's a combination of factors. One is that most of them now spend a lot of time indoors, resulting in minimal sun exposure. When I was a kid, I spent much of the day riding my bike without a helmet because they were not common or required by law, exposing my skin to the elements. We also smoked more, and if we did not smoke, people around us did, often using raw and unfiltered tobacco. By the age of 40, our faces showed significant damage. Story 38. Instagram filters and men and women are all focused on perfect skincare. I would argue there are many people who stop going outside because they prefer to be on their phones indoors. Story 39. We do not smoke. I am shocked at how much of a grip vaping has on Generation Z. Even some good kids I know got into the habit when they went to college because everyone around them does it. It is also almost a reflex, and because it is so easily accessible, it is definitely done more often than smoking. Story 40. As a young millennial, I am regularly seen as approximately 5 years younger than I am, potentially because I was in a sweet spot between leaded everything and plastic everything. I also had plenty of outdoor time balanced with screen time. I take my diet, sleep, and physical well-being seriously. I do some grooming, but nothing excessive. Story 41. Everyone younger than you appears increasingly younger as you age. I am 45 years old, and people in their mid-30s look like children to me. Story 42. I think part of it is fashion trends. Older generations had trends specific to each stage of life. Millennials tend to still wear a lot of jeans, t-shirts, and sneakers. If they do change their wardrobe, they go for what is currently fashionable and adopt Generation Z fashion. As a kid, my mom had a lot of office casual clothes that I just don't need, even though I have an office job. Hair too. I know women who still have 1980s hair. Some still have 1970s hair. But I don't know anyone who still has early 2000s hair. Story 43. I am 31 years old and regularly get confused for a student at the high school where I work. It happened twice today. Story 44. I am a 36-year-old bald man with a full beard. People are often surprised when I say my age and usually think I am 25 or 26. I do not know why. Could be a matter of mental maturity. Story 45. Millennials have discovered aging. This happens to basically everyone once they reach their late 30s or early 40s. You spend your entire life as a young person, then you reach the age when it occurs to you that you are not technically young anymore. But you do not feel any different. During the time you were a young person, you saw people in their late 30s and beyond as old and old-looking because they were compared to you. Now that you have reached that age, you feel like you still look pretty good. You certainly do not look like the memory you have of what old people looked like. In summary, millennials are no longer young but do not feel like they look old. Story 46. I never understood this obsession with how old people look. Everyone has different genetics. I have been told my whole life that I look older than my age. It is an awkward comment to receive. It is not so much that I get offended by it. It just does not seem to matter to me. I look the way I look. Who cares? Story 47. I don't think they do. I think they do. I am Generation X witnessing major coping going on with people younger than me. You are just like the rest of us. You are also aging. You are not special snowflakes. Story 48. No. The majority of millennials, and I mean 99%, look their age. Everyone looks their age. The only people who cannot tell are delusional or they are lying to you to be nice. Story 49. People are generally smoking and drinking less than previous generations. There is also better healthcare, nutrition, less hard labor, and improved skincare routines. This, combined with recency bias in fashion, can make older people appear much older than they are in past media, and younger people look much younger compared to previous generations' perspectives. Story 50. Also, water. Millennials were, as far as I know, the first generation to obsessively carry water bottles and take hydration seriously. Story 51. Maybe genetics. Maybe good skincare and diet. Drinking a lot of water. I am 31 and often get mistaken for being in my late teens or early 20s. This is definitely not due to a lack of stress because my life has been difficult. Story 52. Less smoking, less testosterone, and fewer experiences that help you grow up fast. I think most of it is people's gestures and facial expressions. Story 53. Preservatives in foods. Many processed foods consumed over the last 40 years contain large amounts of preservatives. An article I read mentioned that even cadavers now take much longer to decompose due to the amount of preservatives in our diet. Story 54. The two main causes of the aged appearance are smoking and ultraviolet light. The millennial generation was raised with the message that smoking is harmful, and with the internet we have good reasons to stay inside. The September 11th terrorist attacks also made people less comfortable going outside because of terrorists targeting the homeland of the United States for the first time. Previously, attacks on the continental United States targeted military sites, but the terrorist attacks showed that everyone is vulnerable. This gave even more reason to stay indoors. The new 24-hour news cycle fueled that fear, resulting in parents and families constantly watching the news for any new developments. There are many factors, but the knowledge that ultraviolet light causes skin cancer also meant that outdoor activities required sunscreen. Story 55. We did not smoke a million cigarettes, and we believe in sunscreen. We also probably spent less time outdoors in general. Story 56. Genetics play a role as well. I know people in their 30s who look 40, with receding hairlines, wrinkles, and pigmentation. Story 57. Genetics plays a part as well as environmental factors. I am a 31-year-old female and still get carded for things sometimes. I barely drink, having a glass of wine or a margarita once in a very long while, and I do not smoke or use drugs. Story 58. I think every generation believes the next generation always looks younger, has always looked younger, and probably always will. Story 59. My wife and I definitely do. We are 32, and I still get asked if I am old enough to work at my job, especially if I have shaved recently. Story 60. In my case, looking younger runs in my family. It is probably Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is genetic. I have also been using sunscreen daily since I was 21. Retinol since I was 27, never smoked, drink lots of water, am not big on alcohol, and eat healthy. Story 61. Aside from the general shift towards a healthier lifestyle, people also tend to maintain the style that peaked in their generation. When you look at your peers who are all stuck in 2012, you feel like you are all still doing all right. When you see Generation Zers, they look like dorky older adults stuck in 1995. I am sure we look the same to Generation Z college freshmen. Story 62. Because we were raised being told we can be anything we want, unlike the miserable, hopeless messages previous generations received. Story 63. I am closing in on 31 years old, and people mistake me for being in my mid-20s all the time. For me, it's a mix of genetics, lifestyle, and investing a lot of money into maintaining attractiveness. I am Asian, and my family is full of people who look younger than they are. Everyone has genes for lush hair well into their 50s. I also have personalized medication from a supportive doctor to maintain my appearance, laser hair removal, manicures, waxing, and brow work with a beautician. I have access to a vast amount of information about fashion and styling, online shopping to get those products, extensive skincare and hair care knowledge, and more. Lifestyle habits also help. I don't drink or smoke anything. I spend most of my life indoors and am very careful about my health and well-being. I intentionally focus my life on maintaining a lifestyle that involves looking good and keeping things simple, which ironically is not easy. But for people in my age group generally, 1. On average, millennials have turned away from alcohol and cigarette smoking in large numbers. Regular use of those substances causes many health issues, including visual aging, uneven skin and complexion, discoloration of certain body parts, and persistent health problems such as coughing or loss of focus. Nothing makes a person look more visibly aged than regular alcohol and tobacco use. The people you see on social media can afford to put themselves in the media or on social platforms. These are generally people living indoorsy lives and not doing much manual labor. If you took a truly random sample of 100 people on Earth, you would find a lot of variety in appearance. Most would not be considered attractive by Western media standards. Sun exposure, manual labor, poverty, and disability leave intense marks on a person over their lifetime. Moving from an air-conditioned office to an air-conditioned car to an air-conditioned house does not show those effects. The technology of beauty has advanced significantly in recent decades. While humanity has always been concerned with beauty, we have never had such extreme access to information, services, and products to change our appearance as now. There is more information about everything from hair care to makeup everywhere. New services and techniques are approved every few years that make verifiable impacts. It is easier than ever to travel somewhere for a small procedure and to sift through misinformation about what works and what doesn't. Technologies that used to be far more expensive or inconvenient are now much more accessible, such as laser hair removal, skincare with active ingredients, and non-invasive cosmetic procedures. Social media amplifies confident and outgoing people. If someone has a large following on social media, they have some level of appeal. Even people who are not very physically appealing online put more effort into their appearance than regular people just to compete. If you get the impression that people look younger or more beautiful on social media, that is entirely by design, not reality, especially since misleading technologies like image and video filters are widely accessible. Having a decent-looking photo used to require multiple professionals. Now anyone can create adequate to good-looking media easily and distribute it widely. Body sculpting technology has also advanced. While most people are not undergoing surgery, anyone can do something to change their appearance. There are more types of fitness, dieting, and cosmetic procedures to shape the body than ever before. More medical specialists support these fields. It is easier than ever to procure steroids or hormone medications to change your body. I live near some expensive private high schools where the boys are extremely tall and muscular compared to my high school peers. Those schools cultivate sporting competition and performance, so teens find ways to get a little anabolic steroid boost early on. They also have access to excellent nutrition and great physicians. This creates a situation where teens can look like young adults because they are caught up in adult beauty standards, while adults look younger than they are because they follow trends going the other way. It is unsettling to me. Story 64. I really think the unique optimism that the world experienced in the 1990s and early 2000s also helped many people have a relatively lower stress childhood and teenage years. Story 65. No, not really. The first generation to get Botox and fillers in their 20s, many of them look terrible. It actually makes them look older. Too much Botox and surgeries make them look like Meg Ryan did when she first had too much. She appeared 20 years older than her actual age. I am sure there are plenty of millennials who look just fine. I do see some who look good, but I see many who do not. Story 66. They certainly think so. The beauty hacks celebrities used to become more photogenic are now commonplace. In pictures, millennials absolutely look younger. In real life, you can see the Botox-suppressed crow's feet and facial lines trying to break free. You can more easily spot the lip filler that does not look quite right from all angles. You can see the natural aging in shoulders and arms, for which there are no great solutions other than working out 40 hours per week, which most non-celebrities do not have time for. Story 67. Most of us use sunscreen and avoid sunbathing. We smoke less, drink less, and use more hair loss medications and undergo transplants. We also use skincare products. For a while, our food was more regulated than in previous generations. It was not perfect, but it was better than eating lead-contaminated food. Story 68. Too young for lead poisoning. Anti-smoking campaigns. Pro-sunscreen campaigns. High demographic use of the coronavirus disease 2019 vaccine. Coronavirus disease 2019 has been seriously aging and wearing people out. We also grew up with an earlier internet and are not as focused on Botox and plastic surgery as Generation Z. Story 69. Water. Fewer people in our generation smoke cigarettes. Use sunscreen, not baby oil. I'll never forget the time I went to the beach with my aunt, and she lathered herself in baby oil. Story 70. I definitely look about 10 years younger, but I have always looked young. I never tanned and always used sunscreen. I wear makeup but always use lotions and cleansers. I never sleep in my makeup. I never smoked and gave up drinking in my early 30s. I think products have improved in their effectiveness or at least are not as harsh. I'm not super healthy or active, but I do eat well and try to move around a lot, even though I work from home. My biggest flaws are that I drink a lot of soda and only eat once a day. Story 71. I am convinced the answer is Cheese Whiz. I have no idea what they put in that stuff, but I am convinced it mutated an entire generation for the better, oddly enough. Story 72. Everyone drinks more water and uses sunscreen. Fewer people smoke or stay indoors with smoke. There is less Christian guilt imposed on our spirits, so people are more active and less worried about the devil. Story 73. Not smoking, using sunscreen, and playing video games. We had fewer factors aging our skin than previous generations, as well as more activities to do indoors. Younger generations are also getting heavily into skincare, but not in a good way. They are using really harsh products and extreme beauty regimens on skin that does not need it, which is damaging and aging them worse than if they did nothing. Millennials hit the sweet spot between neglecting their skin and taking care of their skin. Story 74. I was speaking with my wife, both elder millennials, about it. We noticed a lot of younger people in their 20s are already using fillers and botulinum toxin. Oddly, this makes them look older and, in many cases, less attractive. My wife and I are non-smokers and drink once in a blue moon. I think this makes a huge difference in our skin and appearance compared to the use of drugs, cigarettes, vapes, and alcohol we see in younger generations. My skincare routine is minimal. Moisturizer after shaving and sunscreen on very sunny days, while my wife uses creams regularly. Despite this, people still tell us we look 4 or 5 years younger. Story 75. I am 38 and, unfortunately, I smoke and worked outside in the blazing South Texas sun my whole life until a few years ago. My stepdaughters say I look like a vampire because I appear to be in my mid-20s at the oldest. On paper, I should look my age, but after a fresh shave, I could easily pass for someone in their early 20s. Honestly, I have no idea why. Story 76. Millennials have fewer children, so they have more time and money to spend on themselves. Millennials are also getting married less often and later in life, meaning they allocate more effort to self-care. Story 77. I am a 40-year-old millennial, and my wife is 41. Everyone thinks we are in our early 30s or at most 35. I think it is because we always use sunscreen and drink mostly water. Story 78. There is a theory that as lifespans increase, the time required to mature also extends. Just a thought. Story 79. I think it is also worth pointing out that many television personalities millennials grew up watching look very old in their early 30s. There were 38-year-olds on some 90s sitcoms who look older than my 65-year-old father does today. There are probably many factors involved, but comparing 30-year-olds today to George Costanza in the 90s makes most of us look very young by comparison. Story 80. No more than many other generations. I am mid-older Generation X, and until I started going gray a few years ago, people regularly underestimated my age by 10 to 20 years. Almost anyone in any generation who keeps themselves reasonably fit and does not abuse their bodies too heavily tends to look a bit younger. Younger generations tend to be more health conscious than older generations were. Story 81. Smoking is much less socially acceptable. Growing up, most of the adults I knew looked 20 years older because they all smoked heavily. Story 82. My name is Sergeant Man 94. Drinking has ruined my life. I am 31 years old. In all seriousness, I have surprised people for a while with how old I am. Back in high school, I was mistaken for a grade above because I was pretty tall. When I got my most recent job, someone made a reference to Johnny Bravo or Babe. They said I had no business understanding those references. When I asked how old he thought I was, he said 24. I was shocked because he was off by 3 years. This was 3 years ago. Story 83. I am 44 and people think I am in my early 30s. Not being overweight, having no gray hair, not being bald, and not dressing as if I have given up caring about my appearance make a huge difference. Story 84. I am a millennial and I used to look significantly younger than I was. Most people thought I was a decade younger until I turned 40. Now I am just overweight with a gray beard to hide the turkey neck and yellow teeth. Story 85. Heavy drinker and smoker in my mid-30s. I can easily pass as a late 20-year-old. I am starting to get a splattering of gray, so it won't be long. I do not go out in the sun. Story 86. Yes, I can confirm. I just turned 40, am Asian, and still get carded. Before I quit smoking, I used to get carded for cigarettes in my 30s. So it is not the smoking habit for me, at least. My mom used to apply sunscreen an inch thick on me when we went outdoors, so that helped, I think. Probably also lead levels going down and other environmentally conscious decisions made by the government. Story 87. I have a few contributing factors. Most millennials quit smoking in their 20s. Smoking ages you quickly. Most of us wear at least some sunscreen. Air pollution is greatly reduced compared to the 20th century. The big one, hydration. We drink water. I know many baby boomers who do not drink a significant amount of water throughout the day. Story 88. It is not complicated. Less smoking, less drinking, a cleaner environment, and better understanding of sunscreen and skincare. It turns out all these significant changes that were advocated for actually helped and were not just unfounded ideas. Story 89. I have medical notes that say I am 15 years younger than I actually am. I believe it. Watch television or look at photos from the last century and compare those 30 and 40-year-olds to us. I do not know why. Maybe it happens to every generation. It definitely is a thing. Story 90. When I was a teenager, I was constantly mistaken for an adult. Now, as an adult approaching 30 with children, they frequently ask how old I am, then act shocked and tell me I look good for my age. I am just using others' opinions, but I do not know why. Story 91. I will be 30 in a few months, and on average, people think I am about 23. I attribute this to the fact that I do not drink or smoke, and my cheeks are as chubby as ever. Story 92. I guess I got lucky with my genes. I have been doing all of the above in this thread. I was an addict between ages 15 and 33. I smoked a pack a day for most of that time. I drank around 50 to 80 beers a weekend and used more drugs than humanly possible. I also never used sunscreen. I exercised irregularly and was overweight most of my 20s. I did not eat anything healthy and never ate vegetables in my life. My diet has been pasta, meat, and Pepsi Max since I was a child. I am 36 now. I met my girlfriend's brother and his friends a while ago, and they thought I was 25 at most. They still think I am joking about being 36. This has been common since I turned 30, and when I meet new people, I always see surprised faces when my age comes up. Story 93. Honestly, it looks like children are maturing a bit slower these days. I am a Generation Zer, and I can remember that by the start of high school, we were almost all taller than our parents, and probably 2 out of 3 boys could already grow scraggly mustaches. I live in an area today with many children, and the high school students look very young. Granted, some of that perception might be due to the fact that I am older now, but I also think it is a real phenomenon. Story 94. We are sandwiched between chain-smoking generations. Baby boomers, Jones, and Generation X all smoked a lot more than even most millennial party people. Generation Z chain vaped. Plus, we are more likely to take care of the skin we have with sunscreen, serums, and moisturizer than to go to a medical spa and pay for treatments like fillers and buccal fat removal that ultimately age you like Generation Z. Story 95. Every generation since the 20th century has been staying younger longer. Better prenatal and postnatal care, improving healthcare and medicine, better understanding of nutrition, safer working environments, and lowering air pollution contribute to this trend. Story 96. We look younger because we never grew up emotionally, financially, or in housing situations. You cannot age when you are still sleeping in a childhood bedroom with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Story 97. I cannot generalize it to a whole generation. I am almost 33 and have a former classmate who looks worse than my father. Nothing will make you look older than letting yourself go with a pregnant gut and childlike shoulders. Story 98. I like to think that growing up with the internet and a 24-hour news cycle has made us used to stress in our formative years. Our bodies just grew up knowing what to do with cortisol. It is almost certainly the air quality and sunscreen, but it is funny to think about. Story 99. I am on the older side of the millennial generation. Someone once told me I have good skin for my age. I am male and do not do anything to my skin. I have also been told I look younger than I am. I grew up in poverty and experienced times when I was malnourished, not getting enough food or the right types. I was often ill as a child and grew up in houses that were freezing cold in winter with a black mold problem. As a kid, I used to go out with my friends for long walks or bike rides and would be out all day. I was always dehydrated because I never drank water when I was out. I also often got sunburned because we could not afford sunscreen. I do not know how I do not have any physical issues now. I am generally healthy and, other than a few colds a year, I do not get sick. Story 100. I think it's because we started skincare young. I know millennials who smoke, drink, and eat poorly. They still look younger than their age. I also think we weren't outside as much as previous generations, with video games and the internet being a big part of our childhoods. Story 101. I honestly think part of it is that we go outside less than we used to. There is a lot more to do inside these days. If you see younger men who work in the trades and spend all day in the sun, they often look older. Story 102. Every generation looks younger for longer, and I think it is mostly because most hard labor jobs are gone and people tend not to smoke much anymore. Part of it is also that fashion and hair trends help people look younger for longer now as well. Story 103. Look at the cast of Cheers in their 30s compared to millennials in their 30s. Those actors experienced significant aging. Story 104. It has been decades. When you think about the 1980s, there was a distinct aesthetic where people dressed and styled their hair in a certain way. 10 years later, everything looked dated. Since the 2000s, we have not followed decades as a strict measure. Consequently, there has not been an artificial 10-year barrier on styles and trends. People have dressed more similarly over the past 25 years. When you look at a 10-year-old picture, you do not see someone who looks vastly different. Story 105. In general, yes. Fewer people in our generation are heavy smokers, and we are usually more health conscious on average. For example, we wear sunscreen or protective clothing instead of sunbathing, follow better skincare routines, and many of us have reduced or given up alcohol earlier. You can definitely tell who has maintained those behaviors in each generation. Environmental changes, such as the elimination of lead paint and leaded petrol when we were young, also likely helped. People regularly underestimate my age by up to 10 years. Story 106. I smoked 2 packs a day for 8 years, drank heavily for a decade, and used heroin for 2 years. I look 12 years younger than I am. Heroin does not preserve you, I guess. I am kidding. It does not. I just got lucky with my genes. Story 107. I don't have an answer, but I find it interesting that when people guess my age, they always say 27. It is not until I say no that they start guessing in the 30s. I turned 40 in November. I used to absolutely hate looking so young, but I started seeing it as a blessing when I get to my 70s and 80s. Story 108. A lot of it has to do with the fact that people do not really smoke anymore, and it is looked down upon. Also, alcohol is falling out of favor as well. Story 109. Everybody is saying sunscreen and no smoking, but the real reason is that many of us do not have children. Children will age you immensely, and due to the economic and political challenges we have experienced, many of us either decided against having children or seriously delayed the process. Story 110. No, not at all. The old-fashioned haircuts in vintage photos and perhaps the quality of the photos can make people look old to our eyes. I also think people tend to flatter themselves about how much younger they look. Everyone I know around my age looks within a few years of their actual age, myself included. I am 37. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.